Welcome back everyone to Game Asset Creation Fancy Lights, and this is where we left off. Absolutely nowhere again because we didn't really do anything, but now we can actually begin. So what we're first of all going to do is I'm going to, instead of being in layout, I'm going to go to modeling because I find it much easier to work in. It just gets rid, as you can see, of this animation timeline that we don't really need to actually build this. So let's actually go to modeling tab, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to press Shift A, and I'm probably going to bring in, you can either do this one or two ways. We can bring in a cube or we can bring in an actual plane. I think for me what I'll do is I'll bring in a plane. So I'll bring in a plane, we'll get it to be right about the right size. So I'm going to press S and scale it in just a little bit, and that looks a good size for the start of my actual lamp. Then what we're going to do now is we're going to come in, we're going to press the tab button to go into edit mode, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control R, so Control R, left click, and then what I'm going to do is right click, drop it right in the center. Then I'm going to press Control B to bevel, but we're going to bevel it just so we can actually pull these out a little bit. So I'm going to keep them nice and even, so we're going to have one stone here, one stone here, and one stone there. Now on the other side I actually want two, so I'm going to press Control R, left click, right click again, so it's in the center, Control B, pull it out, push your mouse wheel up one, and then you should get more stones on that side. Something like this I think is absolutely fine. Now the other thing is, because we've done it like that, we have actually got a center point, but maybe that center point is a little bit too big. In other words, is this a little bit too big? What we can do if it is too big is we can come in, we can press L, so I can press L, if I grab it all like so, and then I can press the I button and I can bring it in this way instead. So now you can see that we've still got our stones there, but we've made them a lot thinner around these edges like so. And I think this is looking much better. Now we've done that, let's press delete. So all I'm going to do is just press delete. I'm going to delete faces, and then we've got our center point in here, perfectly ready to create those stones. Now I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split these up. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab every middle one. So I want one there, one there, one there, as you can see. Grab both of these, both of these, both of these, and now what you can see is if I do that I can actually split them up, so every single stone is split up. What we're going to do then is press the Y button like so, and then I'm going to press A, and then what we're going to do is extrude up. So if I now press E, I should be able to extrude this up a little bit, creating those stones that we actually want. So we end up with something like this. Now at the moment you can see those stones don't look anything like stones, it just looks like a full block. But in a minute you will see the magic happen when we start using our modifiers. So let's first of all press Control A, all transforms, right click, so origin to geometry. Very important before using any modifier that you reset all of your transforms. And I'm also going to shade it smooth, so right click and shade auto smooth. Now you'll notice when we do that in the new versions of Blender, it does come up with a modifier already on there. So that now is our first basically modifier done automatically for us. Next of all then, let's bring in another modifier. So the next one we're going to bring in is going to be our multi-resolution. So let's add in a modifier, come to generate, and it should be under a little bit down here. Let me just find it, multi-resolution, here it is. Now I find this is easier to use than subdivision, basically because I can delete the subdivisions whenever I want, bring them up. I just find it easier to use. It's especially easier to use when you're sculpting. So if you're, sculpting or using Blender a lot, probably use multi-resolution rather than just the subdivision modifier. Now what I want to do is if I come in and just hit subdivide, you will see this happens. We don't really want that. But as I said, we can actually turn this down one and delete higher. And then we can just start again. So instead of that, we'll do simple, like 2. And we'll turn it up to 2. So 2 of those, and you'll see nothing really happens. And the reason is because it's just divided it, but without changing these sides. So it's not tried to round it off or anything like that. Alright, so the next one we're going to bring in then is going to be our bevel. So we're going to bring in a bevel modifier. So let's go to add modifier, generate, and a bevel. And you'll see that drops underneath. And now you'll see exactly what I was talking about. So now with the bevel, we've got this at the moment on the amount like so. We can turn this down or up. We can also come down if you want to and make it more beveled. Come down and turn off clamp overlap, and you'll notice we end up something like this. Now if I turn this down, you can see that because we've got that clamp overlap off, we can actually stretch these even further with the bevel. Now typically you don't really want to do this because you'll end up with a lot of problems with the UVs, but if you ever come to a model where the actual bevel isn't working, it's generally down to the clamp overlap. you know, being ticked on, and it's just preventing issues with the mesh. So I'm going to turn this back on, put that back to there, and then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn the amount of the bevel down to 0.005, like so. And then what I'm going to do now is we're going to bring in another actual modifier, and this one is going to be our displacement. So if I come back up, add modifier, oh sorry, before I do that, you can actually close these up so they're not all in the way, like so. So what I'm going to do now is bring in another modifier, and we're going to bring in a displacement. Now displacement is under deform because it's basically deforming the mesh. So let's go down to displace, and we will end up with something like this. Now what you need to do first of all when you bring in displacements is come in and first of all turn the strength down to something like, let's have a look, what strength should we have this on, 0.005, and then we'll also set the mid-level down to 0, like so. And then what we need to do is we need to click new, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our texture now, because this is based on the texture. You can see it's displaced based on the texture, and then whatever the texture looks like is what it's going to deform on the actual bricks. And this is the reason why we wanted to bring in a multi-resolution, because we need a little bit more topology to actually work with to give us all of this stone-like displacement that we're going to be using. Alright, so let's go over to the texture, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to set this texture to Musgrave. So I'm going to come down, set it to Musgrave. It's up to you whether you want to name your texture, so you could name it stone blocks, like so. And then what we're going to do now, you can already see that we've got some wobble on there. What we want to do then is turn this down. So if you can see, if I turn this down or turn it up, you can see we've got a lot more wobble there. Let's put this on 0.09, so 0.09, like so. And the other thing is, I recommend playing around with these, also playing around with the different actual images if you want to, but I found this one gives me pretty much what I want, making it really easy to have that stone effect. Now the other thing is, if you are playing around with these, so for instance if I turn this down or I turn it up for instance, when I come and press Ctrl Z, you will see even though I've pressed it, it actually doesn't really go back. So just click it, press the enter button, and then that will put it back to exactly what you want. Alright, so pretty much now if we go back to our modifier, we've got on our smooth. So if we come here, we've got a multi-resolution, a bevel, a displacement, and a smooth, and this is called modifier stacking, and this basically allows us to make, you know, stone look a little bit more like stone with very little work. And you'll see as we carry on now through the course, you'll also see we'll be using this by copying it onto our other stone, and you'll see it's really easy to build things up fast without any sculpting or anything like that. The other thing is now at this point I can actually show you, if we come down and put cavity on, you can see exactly the difference now that makes. So if you turn this off and on, that's the difference it's going to make, guys, and now you can see really what you're actually looking at. So guys, after every lesson, just make sure you come up and you save out your work, and on the next lesson then we'll carry on building this up, and I'll see you on the next one everyone. Thanks a lot, bye bye.